Hey, everybody. I'm Jason Snell, and over there it's Dan Morin.
Hello and happy earnings day, everybody.
Happy earnings day. Yeah. Well, happy for Apple investors, maybe. Happy for Apple employees, maybe. I don't know. Record, record,
We like that
record,
word. We
record,
like that
record.
word a lot.
Again, it's a record. Again and again, it's a record. Record fiscal fourth quarter, which is the most boring of all the Apple quarters, but
Boy, even,
still a record. Record Mac revenue all time.
hmm hmm only 40 years, 45 years. What year is it? Hold on.
It's pretty good. It's the
Yeah.
Macs never look better. What else? What else have we gleaned? Services.
Services deceleration is the word of the call.
Yeah, services down on in sequential quarters, 2 quarters in a row now, but still up year over year. But you can't keep that up. You can't keep declining sequentially and keep the year over year going up. Just that's the
I
law
and I
of
believe that was
numbers.
the forecast is that will continue to decelerate. I think they
Yes,
said in the next quarter.
due
So
to tough foreign
foreign
exchange,
exchange.
they said, because you don't when you're paying when you're paying an amount every month and your foreign exchange changes, the amount doesn't change, right? Apple
Mhm.
doesn't say you pay in US dollars. And so I can see how that hits them. Although I did find it funny that like for everything they had that was going badly, they had an excuse for it.
Oh yeah,
So
there's always a reason, right? It's not our fault.
foreign
Yeah,
exchange
foreign
headwinds.
exchange impact from business in Russia.
Hmm.
Uh,
There's
you
always
know,
a
tough
reason.
compare, Jason.
Tough
It's tough
compare.
compare.
All right, should we walk through the charts?
Let's chart it up.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, I'm going to move us to the chart slide. Oh, look at that. Now you can't actually see it, but Mac revenue. So this is that number, 11.5 billion dollars in Mac revenue,
Billion.
the most not just on this chart, which goes back to fiscal 2018, but the most in Mac history.
That's good. I like that. I like a
Pretty
little
good.
Mac revenue.
They had a favorable compare, as they would say, to last year because they had a whole quarter of the M2 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. But they
Yeah,
in an interesting tidbit for those who are paying attention, they said that the next quarter will be a tough compare because last year they had the new MacBook Pro, implying strongly that there won't be one this year, and they implied it even more strongly when they said our lineup is done for the holidays.
oh,
So
not a fan of that.
sorry
Someone's
about
still
that
waiting
Mac Mini you're
for a
not going to
Mac
get.
Mini. Yeah, geez, guys. Should have held my breath. Interesting tidbits also from the analyst question portion talking about Mac performance and specifically somebody trying to suss out why did the Mac have such a good quarter and the iPad had kind of a weak quarter. And Tim pointed to three effects there. One, the MacBook Air with the M2 that we mentioned. Two, there was a factory shutdown in the June quarter that basically cut output. And so there was a huge backlog in Q3, which meant in this Q4, they delivered all of that backlog in addition to filling their channel inventory. So
Right.
basically, all of Q3's sales kind of get booted, which is
You
why
can
you look
see
at
it
that chart.
actually
Yeah,
on the chart, right?
exactly.
You can see the
That big
Q3
old
down,
dip.
Q4 up, and what you're really seeing there is a big hiccup of the factory shutdowns. Because yeah, they make. I think what we learned last quarter is that they make almost all Macs or assemble almost all Macs in Shanghai, and
Hmm.
Shanghai had a COVID
Lockdown, yeah.
shutdown. And since all of their factories that were manufacturing Macs were in that one area, they all shut down, and they really had a huge backlog. So that
Here's
makes
your
sense.
key to a great quarter is ship 2 quarters worth of Macs in a quarter. That'll do it for you.
Right. And it goes, if you look at the traditional, Q2 is not great. Q3 is a little bit better, and Q4 is a little bit better. And this one was like Q2 was good, Q3 was terrible, and Q4 was, I would say, almost unusually better. And so you just flatten it out. It actually kind of makes sense. Okay, that's in the back revenue slide. Thank you for throwing in the color from the analyst call. I have
Oh
not heard
yeah.
the Q&A portion yet. I only heard the opening statement
I will
portion.
tell you this, Jason. You think they're usually closed mouths. Today felt like some of the tersest answers I've ever heard.
Interesting.
Multiple times where
Well,
there were answers and then dead air for 10 seconds. And everyone's like,
is
that
that
it?
it?
Okay, moving on.
Year over year Mac revenue change, just another Mac figure here. Again, 25% up year over year. It was that minus 10 last quarter due to the factory shutdown. But it's been a pretty great, what is that, for 10 quarters for the Mac. One was down, one was up 2%, and the rest of them were all double digits. It's been a good period for the
Always
Mac.
interesting to look at the Mac quarter jumps too, because unlike the iPhone, I think especially, it's not as seasonal a business, right? There are times of years where they release Macs, but it's not like, hey, so every September there's new Mac, right? And then that's it for the year. So it's always interesting to watch the sort of ups and downs, but mostly ups. You know, there's some new Macs almost every quarter, or one way or another. But yeah.
Yeah, so let's move on to iPad. iPad is funny. It's down. We'll get to the quarterly delta in a minute, but what I found funny about the iPad chart is that for the last year, iPad sales are just super flat, like
Yeah.
$7.2 billion in iPad sales, whether you like it or not. That's the number. I'll also point out that after several years of iPad revenue going up year by year annually, iPad revenue for 2022 fiscal was down from 21. So,
And there were some updates that just happened, obviously, which won't be reflected in this because the quarter already ended. But even there, hard to imagine the 10th generation iPad or an iPad Pro that really didn't change much moving the needle.
Friend of the show, Stephen Hackett asks, is Apple going to be okay? And the answer
Depends
is
on your definition of okay, Stephen.
not if you watch CNBC. They're not. I watch CNBC for 30 minutes once a quarter, just to see right before the results come out, and it is like through the looking glass over there. First off, they are totally freaked out about the tech sector in general. And the question is, like, is Apple going to get dragged down by the rest of it, or is Apple the outlier? And then there are the people there's the guy that they always have on who's like, nope, Apple's great, it's going to be great. And the other people are like, I don't believe you. And then the results come out and they're like, okay. But so is Apple going to be okay? I think they are, but I think one of the challenges that Apple has had over the last 5 years, to take Stephen's silly question seriously, is how they please Wall Street's desire for growth. And there are challenges there in general in the tech sector. And you see it now we're going to get to services in a moment, but like the Apple pinned a lot of its growth on services, which has sort of stopped growing. So it remains to be seen how everybody's going to take that. But I kind of feel like Apple just keeps making money, right? Like, it's just a machine that keeps making money.
In fiscal 22, I believe they had just shy of $100 billion in profit.
Yeah.
Not revenue, profit, which is if that's not doing well, I'd like to not be doing.
Yeah, I take a little portion of that. Okay, so year over year, iPad revenue change. You can see it. This is it's actually every quarter of 22 was down over 21. And I think if there is a single place, and we could argue about the Mac, but if there's a single place where we would say that the pandemic drove kind of like sales of Apple products way in advance, kind of like taking ahead sales for future sales in order to just get things during the pandemic. I kind of feel like the iPad is the answer to that. Like the iPad more than the Mac, right? Because the Mac is still selling well.
Yeah.
But the iPad, I think it's almost undeniable now that in the second half of 20 and all of 21, people bought a lot of iPads.
Sure.
And that behavior did not continue into 22.
Right. And more to the point, those iPads, as we've said before in the past, iPad, refresh, it doesn't happen very often, right? People tend to stick with iPads. People keep a hold on like really old iPads and use them for a long time. So if everybody ran out and bought an iPad when the pandemic happened, I don't think any of those people are really going out and buying iPads again.
No time. So also the iPad has this problem where it's actually even the low end iPads are more than enough to do what people want with them. iPhone revenue. I have a lot less to say about this just because, this is mostly not the new iPhones. It's mostly the end of the old iPhones. And as a result, Q4 tends to be really boring for the iPhone. And then Q1, I said Q5. Q5 for those who...
It helps to have a fifth quarter. That really boosts your profit.
It's overtime. It's overtime. Speaking of which, they actually are going to have overtime in this
13
quarter.
weeks.
It's 13 weeks instead of 12.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to talk about why everything is an easy compare next year or next quarter. Anyway, the iPhone did fine. And this is funny because I look at this and I'm like, it's kind of boring. It's a fourth quarter. It just motored along. It's what it does. But let me tell you, on CNBC, they're like, oh, what will the iPhone do? Because they're like terrified that something bad will happen with the iPhone.
You look at that chart and it's like you can't quite set your clock by it, but pretty close, right? I mean, the pattern is every year the pattern is pretty similar. So yeah, there's some movement, a little squishy movement in those second through fourth quarters, but they're pretty similar.
Yeah, and year over year, I mean, this was actually the best of fiscal 22 in terms of year over year growth at 10% because it was 95310 after last year being great for the iPhone, but it's still growth at a large number. And it'll be interesting though to watch how this next generation of iPhones that just came out does in terms, because it's the third. Mike and I talk about this on Upgrade sometimes. If you look at the annual trends for iPhones, if you kind of roll the iPhone together annually, you end up seeing this effect where you can actually see that first year of a new phone design
model
is up, and then everything sort of slides after that for a while.
But if you can predict it, it's still a pretty good business to be in.
It's that they grew this giant business at 10% year over year is still kind of amazing. Okay, so here we go. Services. 19.8 for Q2, 19.6, 19.2. This is a line that had one quarter of regression over the course of 4 years and has had two in a row now. And I'm just going to move on to the revenue change because that's when they warned about decelerating growth, and this is what that is.
See it. There's that downhill on the roller coaster right there.
That's right. Everybody was at the top at 33 going yay, and now they're screaming. And this is, again, it's funny because it's like doing calculus or something. It is the change of the change here. It's not, the services aren't down, the growth of the services is down, but when you're Wall Street, this is the chart you care about, which is how well is Apple growing this services business that had been such a boon for Apple for the last few years. And the answer is, it is 5 straight quarters of deceleration, and Apple says next quarter will be decelerated too. So I guess the big question is, one, is there another area in Apple's business that they think can make up for a less growth services business, or two, does Apple have a secret plan to grow services and fight inflation? Yes, reference acknowledged. I knew you were going to go there. I almost did it, but I left it for you. Yeah, right. So that's and they did raise prices, although my guess is that's going to mostly counteract foreign exchange and inflation more than anything else.
And that's a tricky thing too, right? Because your risk with raising prices is also that you lose customers who are just like, oh, am I really getting my value for that? I don't think that's a huge risk, but some people may be tightening their belts. As we just mentioned, you're fighting inflation. Lots of people are cutting costs because stuff is more expensive. So some people may decide, hey, I don't, need to subscribe to Apple TV every month. I might turn it on and off, something like that. So that's kind of
on Twitter this week. Julia Alexander, and I will talk to her more about it on Downstream next week. She pointed out that that's one of the challenges with TV Plus is it doesn't have a catalog, and so once you watch the originals, you can just turn it off for a while. And
wait till your show comes
back. I actually think Apple's strategy there is the bundle, right? The Apple strategy there is if you buy the Apple One bundle, then you just keep it on.
Smart for them and tough for us. I mean, a couple of things in the services business too. Obviously, there was a question briefly. People are sort of poking around the edges of this advertising question, and they did mention at one point advertising is not doing great for us. And of course,
soft.
advertising has been a big to do this past week in Apple news as more and more advertising popping up in the App Store. And of course, we've heard rumors of like advertising, tiers and stuff for different services, both from Apple and other places. Somebody tried to ask them about whether or not they could start an advertising business at scale without sacrificing consumer privacy. And Tim said, first and foremost, our focus is on privacy, and then said, our specific advertising business is not large relative to others. That was it. That was the answer to that question, which was I don't actually think that's what the question was. But there you go.
I'm going to throw in, while we're here, a Petrus the Blue question. It's one of my favorite wizards. Do you think the dollar increases to Apple Music and Apple TV actually make a difference to the service's revenue? And my answer is, to a certain degree, yes, they will, because it's still just percentage-wise that it's
you got 1 million people paying $5 a month, and now 1 million people are paying $7 a month. Your money goes up.
Yeah, that's a 40% increase. It's it's something. It's not gonna, it might help a little bit, but it's not gonna move the needle. I mean, the truth is they need more services. I do think, I'll throw this in there, a place that I know they mentioned it, but they really blew past it, that I think has got potential for them if they worked on it. And I think maybe it's the reason they did this, is Fitness Plus is now going to be available for iPhone users. And the accessible market of Fitness Plus subscribers just exploded, because it was previously just people with Apple Watches. And now people with iPhones and no Apple Watches could do Fitness Plus.
That's a lot more people.
That's good, right? That's more people. And that doesn't just go to Fitness Plus, but it goes to the bundle and makes the bundle more valuable. If you already had the bundle, it makes it more valuable, makes you more likely to stay. If you didn't have the bundle, maybe it adds a little bit of weight to the bundle. So it's something.
Also important, friend of the site, Zach Hall, commented in the chat that Apple Music Classical will be what turns services around. What's that?
That's right.
Classical music thing is supposed to launch by the end of 2022. I don't think that's happening, Jason.
Dan. One word. Beethoven.
Oh, you got me. You had me at bait.
You took the bait. It was just click Beethoven.
That
was Zach Hall with another click Beethoven headline. Whew, this is what people pay for? No, this is free. It's on YouTube. All right. Let's look at wearable home and accessories, which actually got back on track with the new Apple Watch and AirPods. And if you look at the numbers, here it's 9.7. That's a good number. That's their best non-holiday in that category ever, I believe. Not just this quarter, but ever. And if we look at the year over year, that's where you really see it, is a whole bunch of 30s, 20s, 10s, then -8 last quarter, and now back to 10. So it's almost like it was in free fall for a quarter, and then they've kind of righted the ship.
They were asked about what was driving growth there, and Tim pointed specifically to the Apple Watch and AirPods Pro, but also added the interesting tidbit that the Apple Watch Ultra was and is still supply constrained. So that's it's a high-end Apple Watch. It's a lot of money, so it's driving some revenue for sure. But they can't sell them fast enough.
So that might be good for a holiday quarter if they can, assuming they can catch up there. So let's move on to Apple revenue totals just to count the money. I make this one green because of money. $90.1 billion in revenue. Pretty good, especially for a Q4. And it's harder to see here, but you can see in the black trend line that starting in 21 had this huge boost in revenue. And I think the story of 22 that's most impressive is that they kept it. Because it was a real inflationary moment for Apple in terms of total revenue in 21. And I don't know if it was the most likely scenario, but certainly a scenario was a regression to the mean there a little bit. And that didn't happen. Not in 22, at least.
Yeah, I mean, interesting, especially is in the last few months we talked about, prices, but especially outside of the U.S. They tipped their hat at one point, pointing out that prices have increased in markets outside of the Americas. which the U.S. market hasn't really seen as much for things like iPhones, right? Like they haven't raised their prices there. But the fact that people, even in an environment where, inflation means costs go up, are still buying iPhones, and iPads and Macs, all these things, which could be considered luxury goods at a certain point. That means they're doing good business. They're being compelling.
Here's the profit, just for those who want to take profit from Apple. $20.7 billion in profit this quarter. Pretty good. Billion.
Yeah, when people complain about your down quarter, your down quarter is 20 billion
in profit.
You can shake that
it's
off.
Not bad. And the year-over-year revenue, same story. Again, you see that massive 2021, but 2022 with the number reset to such a much higher bar, and they still managed 11, 9, 2, and 8. So it's I would say all in all a pretty good year for Apple, especially given all of the drama that happened to it during the year.
Yeah, sure.
Given how huge 21 was, I think that there's an argument to be made that 22 able to sort of maintain is a pretty good story.
And as we discussed, provides them an opportunity to have a nice bit of growth next year if they are putting out big stuff, making big moves.
Yeah. Or it's a fortress against weak economy kind of stuff, having had these two really good years. Here's my pie chart. It's a pie chart. I like it
pie.
because who doesn't like pie? Just to remind everybody that half of Apple's revenue is iPhone, and that almost a quarter of it is services now.
I was impressed the Mac making up a 13% chunk there. It's gone kind of back and forth. I mean, It's times where it's the same as the size of the iPad business, but
and next quarter the iPhone will be like 60% because that's how that works. But
that's how that works.
For this quarter, not so much. And then I've got the one where I stretch it out so you can see this chart is not to chart like percentages, more like just a holistic view of what the area is over time and how it waxes and wanes a little bit, and how services has reached this other point now. But the iPhone's still the bulk of it. And then let's see, I have a couple of quick regional ones, which is just to show how it's going. Rest of Asia Pacific crossed over with Japan because Japan was down. They said there was a lot of foreign exchange issues there, that actually they were up in region currency. They were all up.
Yes, of course.
But foreign exchange drove some of them down. And then I have a second one, which is the year over year. And it's a similar story where Americas, China, and Europe, their three biggest markets, all actually had a okay growth across all of them. And if I could do this, I'm gonna do a little different thing here if I can do this. So everybody's gonna have to bear with me because I'm gonna change this, and things are gonna get weird, everybody.
Oh man,
because I'm gonna take you
weird.
taking you into my numbers spreadsheet. Where the charts,
this is real-time spreadsheeting.
This is where the charts are born, everybody. But I'm gonna zoom in here and show you some of these. These are the annuals. I have not generated these as charts yet because they're not ready. And yet, well, I mean, they're done. I just haven't generated them and had a place to post them. But if people would like to see, I'm going to resize this. Live numbers. That Apple revenue, 99 to 22. This is the annual because this closes out fiscal 22. Remember, holiday is first quarter of 23. And here you can see what I was saying, which is it's a big deal to have maintained and built on last year, because last year was an enormous leap.
Look at that jump. Yeah, no kidding. Also, don't think about that 23 year growth percentage is bananas.
Yeah. All right. Let's.
You're making $6 billion.
I'm just gonna scroll on over to the Mac here, so you can see when we say the Mac, best Mac ever. Here's since '97. Here, there's the Mac growth. Very similar kind of trajectory, except in the 2010s it was kind of in the doldrums, and then the Apple Silicon era it just kind of like kicked off.
Yeah. So feel good about that. Again, I like to see the Mac doing well.
All right, now I actually have to scroll. Where is the? Well, just go to the right, I guess. iPhone, again, a very different story where the 2010s. This only starts in 2009, because there was no iPhone really to speak of before 2008 fiscal. But you can see it there that it had its kind of everything shot up in 15 with the bigger phones, and then two kind of like and then it had a redesign and it went up in 18, and then it kind of went down in 19 and 20, and then shot back up in 21, 22 a little bit. So that's the annual iPhone, and womp womp womp. Here's the iPad, which finally got back up over 30 last year and is now at 29 for 22. So it regressed.
The iPad has the most puzzling, I think, zoomed out view. It is what a strange product, in terms of its financial performance over the years.
I mean, this only increases my appreciation that I decided to refer to the iPad's journey as an odyssey. And I mean that literally, like there are sirens and cyclopses, and it may never get where it's going, may never get back home. It's quite a ride for the old iPad. And then up here is here's the other category, which is the services and wearables, home and accessories, starting at very kind of modest numbers. And you can see that basically wearables has grown not as fast as services, but still has done pretty well, and services has got that just kind of wild trajectory up right there.
Well,
anything else, Dan, taking us away from the charts now, anything else you gleaned from the Q&A, or was it just so anodyne? Like, it's been over the last few years, the Q&A has become less and less of they just read more prepared stuff, and then the questions, they try, but the answers are essentially, they very rarely give us more color.
It's very boilerplate. I thought some of the interesting parts to me were the amusement over the boilerplate, where people are asking things about, what's the impact of that, having an extra week in the quarter? And they're like, well, we sell more stuff. Also, stuff costs more because we have to run the business for another week. So,
Sure.
You're like, okay, that's
nothing. But it's going to be everything gets an 8%
nice.
boost, right? That's how that works. So we're going to have to. That's a key for us, like note to self for 3 months from now, to be sure to put it in the context of it being a 13-week quarter, because, and then also a year from then, because then there'll be the tough compare from 12 to 13. You get you get the good compare one time, and the
and then the tough compare next time.
Tough compare the next time. Which is a tough compare, a phrase we say. With a straight face somehow, which who knows how that is. Oh, by the way, RIP or congratulations, I guess, to legacy nodes. One of those, because Tim Cook said supply constraints aren't a problem anymore.
There we go. We've got all the stuff we need. Well, that's good. Hopefully that means stuff will be shipping in short order. They were asked about the price changes to their services. Mm-hmm. They regurgitated the music licensing increase line.
Oh yeah, that's the the bad news is that that it wasn't us. It was the record companies. But the good news is more money will go to your favorite artists.
But also, my favorite is then asked about TV Plus. They said, well, at the beginning we only had a few shows, and we sort of priced it, to compete. But now we've got a lot more content, and we've increased price to represent value.
I see.
There you go. It's worth more, so they're charging more for it. Other than that,
just wait till they put ads in it. I wonder what they'll charge for the ad version.
Oh, we do have an entrant to my new favorite phrase. We'll see if this comes up. But in mentioning in Luca Maestri discussing the hedges against inflation in foreign currency, said, well, eventually, quote, the hedges roll over. And I thought to myself, Luca, you got to plant those hedges deeper. That's no good. It's no good if your hedges roll over. It doesn't help you.
Yeah. Roll over hedges and tell the trees the news.
There you go. And then the last thing they were asked, and a little tidbit.
That was a Beethoven reference, by the way. That was more Beethoven. I'm just pointing it out. I don't think it was Beethoven, but it was implied.
I don't think Beethoven wrote that, though. The last thing I'll throw in that they asked right at the end there, Tim Cook volunteered, they averaged about one acquisition per month across fiscal year 2022 as they look for IP talent, or preferably both. So there you go. They bought some companies, but not as many, I think, as they tend to.
Talk about esoteric, but I've enjoyed the fact that they keep talking about their overall goal to reduce their cash flow to a cash neutral position. Yes. And every year every quarter, Luca Maestri says something, and I'm making up these numbers, but this is essentially what it is, well, we spent $1 zillion on cash buybacks and $1.5 billion on dividends.
Yeah.
And we paid off $500 million in commercial paper, which is their loans, leaving us with $1 bazillion of cash for the quarter, which gets us closer to our goal of a cash neutral position. I'm like, okay,
please help us. Please help us. We cannot get rid of this money.
No, what they need to
Take
do
it out, burn it.
is they need to take the entirety of the Steve Jobs Theater, that little enclosure, and they need to make it like I can't even remember what the game. There was that game show where you went in a little lucite booth,
yes,
and you had to grab money
around. Yeah,
just fill the Steve Jobs Theater top level with the money and like a big blower, and then just to have people come in.
I think several people
money.
might get suffocated because the volume of paper might be too high.
That's right.
They use hundreds or something to give you a fighting chance.
This is kind of a Scrooge McDuck situation, right? Which is that if you dove into the giant pile of coins, you would die.
Yeah, don't do it.
Even if you're a duck, you would die.
Especially if you're.
All right. Well, another quarter gone by. Apple, like, again, I just to wrap it up, I'll say watching MSNBC, the doom and the gloom is remarkable. And I get it, like, because they said when the numbers came out, they're like, oh, this exceeds and this is a miss, and it makes it sound like, oh, Apple undersold this, but they're not talking about Apple. They're talking about the street consensus, which, if you're an investor, that's how you have to think, because what people expect is priced into the stock, right? Like, if they expect it to be good, they buy it at a higher price. The price goes up because they think it's going to be good. And that's part of the price is wishing. They're very serious business people, stock analysts especially, very, very serious. But the truth is there's a lot of wishing and hoping that goes into stock prices. And when the hopes are dashed or the wishes are fulfilled, the price will move accordingly. But it is funny to not only see that, but also to see them putting it all in the context of Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook and all sorts of other tech companies, and a general worry about the tech industry. And, Apple stock is down from what it was. And we don't have Apple stock and kind of don't care about that aspect of it. I think we're more interested in just sort of how the business operates. But it is funny to see all of that, the kind of terror, and then look at the numbers and be like, they continue to be a machine that generates so much cash that Luca Maestri can't give it away.
That's right. We're not fast enough.
And their products, like the iPad, is a little bit weak, but like the iPad is doing flat. It's kind of okay. And every other product is doing really well, especially the Mac right now, which is also pretty amazing. So, yeah, it's another one of those.
So we'll be back in another quarter.
That's right. 3 months. Set your calendars for January.
Yeah, 2023.
Yeah, Q1 23. We're in it now by Apple fiscal terms, but no others. All right. Anything else, Dan?
I got nothing.
All right. Well, thank you to everybody out there. Thanks to the people in the chat. We enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. I'll give you a plug. Become a member of Six Colors if you aren't already. And there's great benefits at three different levels, including the level where we will very soon, I think, in the next month, do like a live Zoom with people and talk to them like in person live, and not like in person on Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, like we're not going to
not pre-taped, not like pre-recorded or just like a stream that goes out. Like you could talk to us and we'll listen.
We can hear you, like not like you talk to us now and we're just like, no.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you for your consideration there. We'll also still do live streams about some of this stuff for free, because that's how we roll. We give stuff away, and we also do member stuff. Yeah, but Dan needs some baby booties for himself, because he loves them, but also his baby.
I do. They're very comfy. They fit on all my fingers.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Happy Apple Chart Day. Bye, Dan.
Bye, Jason.